Hi friends, this is Marilyn from tarotclarity.com, and yesterday I aired a video showcasing the most recent deck from Artisan Tarot, which is the FF Solesio. It's a 22 card deck, so it's a trump deck from Genoa, Italy, 1865. And because I happen to have a facsimile copy of the same deck, I thought today I would do a comparison, a side-by-side, comparing the Trumps only cards. Now, to give credit to the second deck that I'm using, it's called the Piedmontese Tarot, 1865. And the back of the box says this deck is based on the Piedmontese Tarot deck published in Genoa, Italy in 1865 by F.F. Solesio. The folks over at Artisan asked me if I knew what the FF stood for, and I think Faustino may be one of the F names, but I wouldn't bet my life on it, but that could be from what I've seen referenced, how I've seen this deck referenced. And we have a little bit more information. An original lithograph printed copy of this deck is held in the collection of the National Library of France. So although it's an Italian deck, it's it's preserved in France, the National Library of France. The artwork for these cards has been edited from the original public domain images for Anarchy Games by Robert L. Lynch. So that's who published this deck, and you can get that at Anarchy Games, anarchy-games.com, and I'll include a link at the bottom of both the websites. So I'm not necessarily doing a comparison of cardstock, etc., like that, quality of cards. I was really just going to do a side-by-side to show how a modern day deck publisher might reinterpret an older deck, right? That, however, why not? Why not make a little bit of a comparison? The Solesio, the Piedmontese Tarot by Anarchy Games, has a shine to it. It's not a gloss, but it's a sheen. And the cardstock is consistent with like Make Playing Cards. So if any of you have ever ordered a deck from Make Playing Cards, it's a similar kind of feel to the deck. As a matter of fact, I think I purchased this deck at MakePlayingCards.com, I'm pretty sure. And Artisan is very consistent with their cardstock, the smooth, the nice linen, rather, that we're accustomed to. Just makes the cards glide so nicely. Now, Artisan decided to do a petite size with this deck, whereas the Piedmontese Tarot, based on the same deck by Anarchy Games, is a large, a full-size tarot deck, full-size modern tarot deck. So you can see that they're quite different in size, and their backs are also distinct. And I don't know which is the original, if either of them are original backs. Now, when I showcased the Artisan deck in the most recent video, I commented on how the characters seem to be facing in the opposite direction of what we're accustomed to, with particularly with TDM. But Artisan has become really adept at not, changing too much. The earlier decks, I think they were clarifying, sometimes over clarifying, which I don't necessarily find objectionable, but some people might, for a historic deck, which has quirks. But I think they're getting more of the understanding to kind of, keep the original quirks and just present it in a way that is a little easier to see. The original, the facsimile deck, seems to be in rough shape. Some cards are kind of rough. But it seems like, you know, based on this card, and we'll see others, that Artisan is honoring, you know, the original deck without too many major changes. Now, I said when I was doing the review of the Artisan deck that it looked like the Il Gatto is wearing like a apron, and it looks even more like that in the facsimile, doesn't it? So in a way, it's kind of a cross between an artisan and maybe a trickster, a sleight of hand individual. Now the female Pope, she's in rough condition in the original. But it looks like all of the ingredients remain. Now the Solesio, although it's an Italian deck, it comes after, like, 200 years after TDM was introduced in France, right? So now we have an Italian deck with TDM flavor, right? So that's interesting in a way, you know, perhaps the Italians were, although the Italians created the game and the deck of tarot, it's possible that they wanted, the French made it very fashionable, you know, and so the Italians sort of got reacquainted with their own deck, and some of the deck creators maybe recreated their decks, I think many did, in the fashion of the French. Now again, we're seeing consistently that some of the cards are facing, or the movement is in the opposite direction of what we're accustomed to. In the original, we see that the scepter sort of got printed over. The drawing is there. You see the drawing, but the color was, you know, just sloppy, right? Whereas Artisan restored that. So they did make that clarification. They made that change in the card of the female Pope. Excuse me, the Empress. And as I mentioned on many of my videos, the scepter would always, of a leader, of a king, queen, emperor, empress, would always be in the right hand. And so we see it in the left hand. So that's a clue that the image was reversed. And we see it again in the emperor, who again faces in an opposite direction. But they really have conserved and retained much of the original deck, just cleaning it up. Now you can see the detail of the Pope, right? How blurry it is. And I mentioned that there are many features of TDM1 in this particular deck, despite its late date, 1865. So we see the characteristic of a blindfolded Cupid that we see in TDM1. And the scalloped canopy of the Chariot. Yep. And the backs of the chairs of the Justice card looks less ambiguous, less like wings and more like a chair back or a throne. And we see the wheel going in a different direction from what we're accustomed to seeing. Nicely done there. Nicely done. And here we see the fingers coming from behind the shoulders. Ah, yes, when I commented on my previous video when I was showcasing this Solesio, I commented that I bet the original had yellow ink over black to make it look like green. And that is indeed what it looks like was happening here. And this is how Artisan recreated that look. I commented that this death almost looked like he had a Liberace wig on. Remember Liberace? And we have the face and the belly of the devil. And we almost have eyes in his knees, but not quite. He has those clawed toenails in both. And a sense that the fire is coming from the tower rather than the heavens. And we see the original star card is in rough shape. This could not have been an easy deck to bring back to life. And I really like what they did with it. But unlike TDM1, we have a side glancing moon rather than a full facing moon. So that is the one thing that I've noticed that's different from TDM1. And some of the directions being different, of course. So there we have it. We have the C of the cloth. So there we have it, friends. I hope you enjoyed this comparison video. Sometimes we like to know what the original deck looked like. Sometimes it's, it's awesome to have a facsimile deck. But sometimes, it's also awesome to have a deck that brings the original deck back to life and then kind of in a restorative way so that you still have the main ingredients and you still have the flavor, but it's got a whole new, it's like a breath of fresh air, right? And I think once again, Artisan delivered in that regard. And as I mentioned, it's got the awesome linen finish, and I don't think you'll be disappointed. Until next time, friends, peace and stay well.